The joke left my mouth at 2:14 in the morning, and by 2:17, an alien warship was landing outside my outpost to deliver my wife. Nolan Reed had said it because he was tired, freezing, and alone enough to think the universe had stopped listening. The maintenance bay of Outpost Kepler 9 smelled like hot wires, burnt coffee, and recycled air that had passed through the filters one too many times. Outside the reinforced glass, the desert moon stretched for miles in every direction, nothing but black rock, silver dust, and the distant curve of a gas giant filling half the sky like a bruised blue eye. Nolan was 31 years old, a human systems mechanic with a bad knee, 2 overdue messages from Earth he had not answered, and a talent for fixing machines that no longer deserved mercy. At that hour, his only audience was a floating service drone with a cracked lens, a half-dead comms panel, and the 6 other night shift workers watching his private maintenance stream, because boredom on Kepler 9 could make anything entertainment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nolan muttered, tightening a coolant valve with a wrench older than some colonies. "Tonight we are repairing the same oxygen regulator for the 4th time this week, because apparently this station wants a relationship more toxic than my last one." A few laughing icons popped across his wrist display. Someone from hydroponics wrote, "Ask it to marry you." Nolan snorted, wiped grease from his white hand onto his already ruined gray jumpsuit, and looked straight into the drone camera. "At this point, I would marry anyone who could help me keep this place running. Alien princess, space witch, vampire warbride, I am not picky. If the universe has a wife available, tell her I am in Bay 3 and I can offer lukewarm coffee, emotional damage, and a queen-size sleeping pod with 1 broken heater." The stream exploded with laughing comments. Nolan gave a tired little bow, expecting the joke to vanish into the same lonely static as every other stupid thing people said at night on the edge of mapped space. Then the outpost alarms went silent. Not loud, not broken, silent. Every machine in Bay 3 stopped humming at once, and the sudden absence of sound made Nolan feel like the moon itself had inhaled. His wrist display flashed once, then filled with symbols he could not read, sharp crimson letters folding over one another like living metal. The service drone turned away from him on its own, pointing toward the observation glass. Nolan followed its lens. Above the desert, a red star had appeared where no star had been a second earlier. It grew larger, closer, not falling, arriving. "Control," Nolan said, his voice suddenly dry. "Please tell me we have scheduled traffic." The comms panel answered with a burst of static and one phrase spoken in a woman's voice, low, elegant, and impossibly calm. "Proposal received. Warbride descent authorized." The red light became a ship. It came down without fire, without smoke, without any engine sound. A blade-shaped vessel of black alloy and crimson glass settling onto the landing flats half a mile from the outpost, as if gravity had chosen to kneel for it. Every worker on the night shift was on the channel now, but no one laughed. Nolan stood frozen beside the oxygen regulator, wrench in hand, heart thudding hard enough to make his ribs ache. A ramp opened beneath the ship. Red mist rolled across the silver dust. Through it walked a woman in dark ceremonial armor shaped like a bridal gown made for war, tall, pale white-skinned, and terrifyingly composed, with long silver hair moving in a wind that did not touch the desert. Her eyes glowed crimson through the distance, and even through the glass, Nolan felt them find him. The outer speakers crackled. "Human Nolan Reed," she said, and every light in the maintenance bay turned red. "I am Commander Vaelith Ardent of the Nocturne Dominion, sworn Warbride of the 7th Crimson Fleet. Your proposal has been heard under ancient law." Nolan's mouth opened, but nothing intelligent came out. Behind him, someone whispered over the comms, "Dude, what did you do?" The alien vampire woman stopped beneath the observation glass, lifted one armored hand to her chest, and bowed with the solemn grace of a queen accepting a crown. "I accept." The maintenance bay doors did not open right away, which gave Nolan Reed almost 30 seconds to realize he had no plan. 30 seconds was not enough time to understand alien marriage law, apologize to an interstellar warbride, or explain to the entire night shift why a joke about loneliness had just become a diplomatic emergency. It was, however, enough time for everyone on Kepler 9 to start talking at once. The comms channel erupted with overlapping voices from hydroponics, security, command, and at least one panicked intern who kept asking if proposals were legally binding if spoken during equipment repair. Nolan stood beneath the red emergency lights with his wrench still in one hand, staring through the observation glass at Commander Vaelith. She remained outside on the landing flat half a mile away, pale white face lifted toward him, long silver hair moving in the artificial gravity wash of her ship, her dark ceremonial armor shaped with the elegance of a bridal gown and the authority of a battlefield uniform. She did not look confused. That was the worst part. Nolan was confused enough for both of them, but she looked like the universe had finally done something correctly. "Mr. Reed," Station Commander Hollis said over the channel, each word tight with the effort of not yelling. "Please confirm you did not knowingly transmit a formal marital request to the Nocturne Dominion." Nolan pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "Commander, I thought I was joking to 6 people and a broken drone." "7 people," someone from hydroponics muttered. "I invited my cousin." "Not helping," Nolan said. The outer speakers crackled again, and Vaelith's voice passed through the bay, calm and resonant, turning every sarcastic thought in Nolan's head into dust. "Human Command Authority, I request permission to enter the outpost and stand before my accepted bond spouse." The channel went dead silent. "Bond spouse?" Nolan stared at the speaker as if it had personally betrayed him. Commander Hollis answered after a pause. "Commander Arden, this outpost is a civilian maintenance station under United Systems protection. We require clarification before granting entry." Vaelith inclined her head, regal even at a distance. "Clarification is simple." Nolan Reed issued a spouse call under open void, naming no house, no dowry, and no bloodline requirement. The old bridal arrays recognized his voice as unclaimed, voluntary, and compatible. "I answered first. Therefore, by Nocturne War Covenant, I have accepted." Nolan's wrist display flickered again. The crimson alien symbols reorganized themselves into English, painfully clear this time. Spouse call validated. First response claim registered. Public witness count, 8. Nolan slowly looked at the service drone. Its cracked lens tilted at him with mechanical innocence. "You streamed it," he whispered. The drone beeped. Across the bay, the emergency bulkhead doors finally unlocked with a heavy magnetic thud. 2 security officers rushed in wearing soft armor and expressions that suggested their training had covered pirates, fires, and maybe drunk miners, but not a vampire bride arriving through a legal loophole. One of them, Officer Dana Miles, pointed at Nolan's wrench. "Put that down." "Why?" Nolan asked. "Because I need to feel in control of something." Nolan put the wrench on the workbench. Outside, Vaelith had not moved closer. She was waiting for permission. That detail reached him through the panic and stayed there. A creature from a feared Dominion War fleet, a woman whose ship could probably turn Kepler 9 into salvage paperwork, was standing in the freezing moon dust because a civilian outpost had not opened the door. She was powerful enough to terrify the station, but she was obeying a boundary. Commander Hollis appeared on the wall monitor, gray-haired, sleep-deprived, and visibly calculating the cost of every possible sentence. "Mr. Reed, you are to remain in Bay 3. Do not make further romantic, legal, ceremonial, humorous, or metaphorical statements until advised." "That feels broad, but fair," Nolan said. Hollis ignored him. "Commander Ardent, for the safety of all personnel, you may enter alone, unarmed, under temporary diplomatic restraint." A pause. Then Vaelith raised both hands slowly. Pieces of her armor unfolded from her wrists and shoulders, floating backward into a ring of dark metal that locked itself beside the ship ramp. No blades, no visible weapons. Only the woman remained, still imposing, still impossible, but somehow more vulnerable without the warlike silhouette around her. The airlock tunnel extended across the landing flat, connecting the outpost to the exterior platform with a pressurized hiss. Nolan watched through the glass as she stepped inside. Each movement was precise, ritualized, almost solemn. The inner airlock door opened 3 minutes later. Cold red mist curled across the maintenance bay floor, and Commander Vaelith Ardent walked into Nolan's ordinary life as if entering a throne room. Up close, she was taller than him by several inches, with pale white skin like moonlit marble, crimson eyes steady and intelligent, and an expression that held neither embarrassment nor amusement. She studied his grease-stained jumpsuit, his tired face, the small scar on his chin from a repair accident last winter, and the nervous way he kept his hands visible. "You are Nolan Reed," she said. "I am," he answered. "Mostly by accident tonight." A few people on the comms forgot to mute their breathing. Vaelith looked at him for a long moment. "You offered poor lodging, warm liquid, emotional damage, and partnership without bloodline demand." Nolan closed his eyes. "I was making a bad joke." "No," she said, and for the first time her voice softened. "You were telling the truth in the language humans use when truth feels too exposed." That hit harder than he expected. The bay seemed quieter after it. Nolan had spent years turning loneliness into punchlines because punchlines did not ask for help afterward. Vaelith had heard the joke and found the wound underneath. Officer Miles shifted near the door. "Commander Ardent, are you saying he is married now?" Vaelith's gaze did not leave Nolan. "Not yet. Acceptance begins the covenant. Completion requires a choice spoken face to face." Nolan exhaled, relief and fear colliding. "So I can say no?" "Yes," Vaelith said immediately. The whole room changed around that answer. A warbride who accepts a forced spouse dishonors her fleet, her house, and herself. "You may refuse me," Nolan Reed, "but you must refuse before witnesses, and you must understand what your call awakened." The lights flickered again. On the wall monitor, Commander Hollis went pale. Behind Vaelith, the observation glass filled with new red stars appearing above the desert moon. "Not one ship now. Many." Vaelith turned toward them, her calm expression tightening for the first time. "My rivals heard the call too," she said. "And if you refuse me before protection is declared, they may claim you issued an open challenge instead." Nolan looked at the growing crimson lights above Kepler 9, then back at the alien vampire woman who had crossed half the void because he had joked about needing someone. "How many rivals?" he asked. Vaelith's eyes darkened with old duty. "Enough to make your little outpost famous before sunrise." The first rival ship crossed the gas giant's blue glow like a red needle pulling thread through the dark. Then another appeared. Then 5 more, each one sliding out of jump space above the desert moon with impossible silence, their black hulls catching starlight and turning it crimson. Nolan Reed watched them through the maintenance bay glass and felt the joke that had started this whole thing collapse into something too large for humor. Kepler 9 had always been a forgotten outpost, a place where careers went to rust and equipment went to die slowly. Now half the night sky looked like it had been invited to his accidental wedding. Commander Hollis's face remained on the wall monitor, but the color had drained from it. "Commander Ardent," she said carefully, "identify those vessels." Vaelith did not look away from the sky. 7th Fleet Challengers. House Draven. House Core. House Sable Thorn. They arrived faster than expected. Nolan turned to her. Expected? Her crimson eyes shifted to him, and for the first time since entering the bay, he saw something beneath her perfect control that looked almost like regret. A spouse call from an unclaimed human is rare. A spouse call answered by me is political. Officer Miles made a small sound near the door. "Political how?" Vaelith stood in the red emergency light, pale white skin almost luminous, silver hair falling over the dark lines of her underarmor. No weapons visible, no raised voice, and somehow she made the whole maintenance bay feel like the front row of a royal hearing. "I am not only a warbride," she said. "I am commander of the 7th Crimson Fleet, oath-bound heir to the Ardent War line, and the last surviving daughter of the Nocturne Dominion's High Marshal." The room went so quiet Nolan could hear coolant dripping from the broken regulator behind him. "So," he said slowly, "when you accepted my joke, I announced that the most contested military bride in the Dominion had chosen a human mechanic with no house, no fleet, and no political debt." Nolan closed his eyes for half a second. "That sounds bad." "It is worse than bad," Vaelith replied. "It is honest." The word struck him oddly. Honest. Not catastrophic. Not foolish. Honest. He opened his eyes and found her watching him with a seriousness that made him stand straighter despite himself. "My people marry for alliance, bloodlines, fleet access, territorial repair, old grudges disguised as ceremony. Every proposal I received before yours came with conditions. Produce heirs. Merge command. Silence dissent. Strengthen a house that wanted my name more than my company. She looked toward the desert where the rival ships were descending into distant hover positions. Your call had nothing. No demand. No calculation. You offered bad coffee and a broken heater. Nolan tried to swallow around the ache rising in his throat. He had meant it as a joke because jokes were safer than saying, I am tired of coming home to nobody. He had not imagined someone powerful enough to terrify a moon would hear that and call it freedom. Commander Hollis broke the silence. Commander Ardent, are these houses hostile? Vaelith's expression hardened. They cannot attack a United Systems outpost without violating treaty, but they can challenge the validity of the Covenant. If they prove Nolan's call was false, coerced, or dishonorable, they can take custody of me until the Dominion Court decides my future. Custody? Nolan asked. He hated the word immediately. Vaelith did not soften it for him. A graceful prison with silk walls. Outside, 3 red beams swept across the landing flats, scanning the outpost without touching it. The lights passed over Bay 3, and every monitor filled with Nocturne script. Nolan's wrist display translated one line at a time. Formal challenge registered. Human speaker must declare intent. Warbride acceptance under review. Public witnesses required. The 6 night shift workers on the stream had become 8, then 50, then the number spiked so fast the counter blurred. Someone had shared the feed across the internal station network. Nolan felt his stomach drop as names filled the viewer list. Engineering crew, med bay, cargo handlers, cafeteria staff, miners from the lower dome, children in the family wing who should have been asleep. Public witnesses. Kepler, 9 was watching. Vaelith saw the counter too. That complicates the house's strategy. Because now they cannot hide what they say. Nolan asked. Because now they must treat you as a person in front of your own people. The maintenance bay door opened again, and Commander Hollis entered in a Navy station coat over sleep clothes, flanked by 2 security officers and Dr. Priya's son from Med Bay. Hollis looked at Nolan with the exhausted fury of someone who had spent 20 years preventing disasters and had just met a disaster named after a man in a grease-stained jumpsuit. Mr. Reed, I need a clear answer. Did you intend to propose marriage to Commander Ardent or anyone else under Nocturne law? No, Nolan said. Vaelith went utterly still. The answer was true, and it hurt anyway. Nolan saw it flicker across her face for less than a second before discipline covered it. The crimson in her eyes did not dim, but something behind it stepped back. He turned toward her quickly. I did not intend the legal part. I did not know any law was listening. Vaelith inclined her head once. Then the covenant may be dissolved. The wall speakers crackled, and a new voice filled the bay, male, smooth, and amused. Wise. The human admits false intent. Commander Ardent, stand down and prepare for transfer to House Draven Review. A holographic image formed above the main console. A tall, pale vampire lord in black ceremonial armor, his smile polished and empty. Vaelith's shoulders squared. Lord Cale Draven. Nolan disliked him instantly. Not because he looked dangerous, but because he looked pleased to find her cornered. Cale's hologram turned toward Nolan. Human mechanic, your cooperation will be rewarded. You were lonely. You made a joke. No shame in that. Sign a statement confirming emotional instability, and this unpleasant matter ends. The maintenance bay felt suddenly colder. Emotional instability. Nolan recognized the shape of the trap. Not a blade. Not a threat. A form. A statement. A clean official version where the powerful left untouched and the ordinary man became an embarrassing footnote. Vaelith did not look at Nolan this time. She stared straight ahead, giving him freedom to save himself by making her smaller. He thought of her standing outside in the moon dust, waiting for permission when she could have forced entry. He thought of her saying he could refuse. He thought of the words graceful prison with silk walls. Nolan took one step toward the console. I will not sign that. Cale's smile thinned. Careful. You already confessed you did not intend marriage. Correct, Nolan said, his voice shaking but clear. I did not make a proposal because I understood your law, but I did make a joke because I was lonely, and she heard the truth under it. If your covenant cares about truth, then review that. Vaelith turned to him slowly, disbelief and something dangerously tender breaking through her composure. Commander Hollis folded her arms. For the record, Mr. Reed, what is your intent now? Nolan looked at the alien vampire warbride who had landed because his worst joke had been more honest than his best lie. My intent is to understand what choice she actually has. The maintenance bay lights flared crimson. The rival ships outside shifted in the sky. And across every speaker on Kepler 9, an ancient nocturne system answered in a voice like a cathedral opening its doors. Intent accepted. Trial of consent begins. The trial of consent did not begin with a judge, a gavel, or a throne. It began with the maintenance bay floor turning transparent beneath Nolan Reed's boots. He grabbed the edge of the workbench as the dull gray panels dissolved into a projection of the desert moon below, silver dust stretching in every direction under the red shadows of rival ships. No one fell. The floor remained solid. But every worker in Bay 3 froze as if the outpost itself had been lifted into open space. Across the walls, nocturne symbols unfolded into English one line at a time. Question 1. Did the human speaker act with free will? Lord Cale Draven's hologram smiled like the answer had already been purchased. He has admitted ignorance. Ignorance invalidates covenant. Vaelith Ardent stood still beside Nolan, pale and composed, but he could feel the tension radiating from her like heat from a sealed engine. Commander Hollis stepped forward before Nolan could speak. Under United Systems law, ignorance of foreign ceremonial code does not equal coercion. Cale's eyes flicked toward her. Your law is local weather. Ours is older than your species' first engine. Then maybe it has had plenty of time to learn manners, Nolan said. The Bay went silent. He regretted the sentence immediately, but only a little. A few muted laughs leaked through the station stream before someone cut them off. Vaelith turned her head just enough for him to see the smallest curve at the corner of her mouth. Not amusement exactly. Approval under armor. The ancient system answered without emotion. Free will detected. Question 2. Did the Warbride answer without compulsion? Cale's smile vanished. Commander Ardent is bound by fleet expectation. Her answer protects her from rivals. Therefore, it is strategic, not voluntary. Vaelith looked at the hologram, and the red lights in the bay reflected in her crimson eyes. Every answer I have ever given was strategic because my life was built into other people's campaigns. That does not make this one false. The rival ships outside shifted formation, and the observation glass trembled softly. Nolan looked from Vaelith to the ships. What would happen if the system rules against you? House Draven would petition to hold me under review, she said. House Court would demand military arbitration. House Sablethorn would offer protection that becomes ownership by another name. And what do you want? Nolan asked. The question was simple. Too simple for the room. Commander Hollis looked at him sharply, as if she had expected technical questions, legal angles, diplomatic wording. Vaelith looked at him as if no one had asked her that in years. The projection beneath their feet shimmered, waiting. I want, she said slowly, each word chosen like it cost her. One decision in my life that is not treated as fleet property. The ancient system pulsed crimson, then silver. Voluntary answer detected. Public witness confirmed. A murmur rolled through the live station channel. On the viewer counter, the number had climbed into the thousands as miners, cooks, pilots, med techs, families, and off-duty staff watched from every dome and corridor on Kepler 9. Nolan realized the trial was not only testing him and Vaelith. It was forcing both civilizations to watch how they treated a lonely man and a powerful woman who was still not free. Cale leaned closer through the hologram, his voice silk over ice. Sentiment is not covenant. The human has not offered a bride price. He has no house banner, no military rank, no estate, no compatible lifespan. What can he possibly give Commander Ardent except inconvenience? Nolan felt every word find the places he already doubted. No rank, no house, no grand future. Just a mechanic with a bad knee, a paycheck that barely justified the distance from Earth, and a mouth that had accidentally called down history. Vaelith stepped forward, but Nolan lifted a hand. Not to stop her, to stand on his own. You are right, he said. Cale's eyes gleamed. The maintenance bay seemed to shrink around Nolan. I do not have a house. I do not have a fleet. I cannot offer her an alliance or a throne or whatever a vampire lord thinks a life is worth. He turned toward Vaelith then, not the ships, not the court system, not the thousands listening. But I can offer something nobody seems to have given her tonight. A real choice, even if that choice is not me. Vaelith's expression changed so subtly most people might have missed it. Nolan did not. Her breath caught. The trial script spun faster beneath their feet. Kale's hologram hardened. Careful, human. If you release your claim, you lose all standing. Good, Nolan said. Then she will know I am not using it. Commander Hollis whispered. Mr. Reed, do you understand the risk? Not fully, he admitted. But I understand enough. He faced the projection filling the bay. I withdraw any claim created by accident. I ask the Covenant to recognize only what Commander Ardent chooses after that. Every light on Kepler 9 went out. For one long second, the outpost hung in total darkness, surrounded by rival ships and watched by thousands of silent people. Then a single silver line appeared around Nolan's boots. Another appeared around Vaelith's. They did not connect. Not yet. The ancient voice returned, deeper than before. Accidental claim withdrawn. Warbride free, standing restored. Final question. Does Commander Vaelith Ardent choose to remain? Kale Draven's face twisted, the polished charm finally cracking. Vaelith, do not mistake humiliation for romance. He has nothing. Vaelith turned toward him, and for the first time, Nolan saw the full commander beneath the bride, the woman who had led fleets and survived every hand that tried to turn her into a treaty. That is precisely why his offer matters, she said. There is no empire hidden inside it. She looked back at Nolan. The red lights returned softly, no longer alarms, but a quiet glow across her pale face. Nolan Reed, human systems mechanic of Kepler 9, you accidentally called across the void, then deliberately gave me freedom before protection. That is not nothing. The silver line around her boots moved, slowly crossing the floor until it touched his. I choose to remain. The maintenance bay erupted into stunned silence, which somehow felt louder than applause. Outside, the rival ships stopped advancing. Kale's hologram flickered as the ancient system spoke over him. Consent verified. Covenant enters protection phase. Nolan had just enough time to feel relief before the floor projection changed. A new symbol appeared, black and crimson, descending from one of the rival ships like an eye opening. Vaelith's expression sharpened. Draven will challenge protection by honor trial. Nolan swallowed. What does that mean? She glanced at the broken oxygen regulator behind him, then at the thousands watching through the stream. It means they think you are useless because you are not a warrior. Nolan looked at the failing machine, the station alarms returning one by one, and the families depending on that oxygen system. For the first time all night, he smiled without joking. Then they picked the wrong test. The honor trial arrived disguised as a maintenance request, which was the first encouraging thing Nolan Reed had heard all night. The black and crimson symbol on the bay floor unfolded into a rotating schematic of Kepler 9, highlighting the failing oxygen regulator, the frozen exterior intake towers, and the backup scrubbers that had been patched so many times they looked more like folk art than engineering. A formal nocturne voice filled the maintenance bay. Protection challenge registered. Human candidate must demonstrate capacity to preserve shared shelter. Trial condition. Restore life support stability before rival petition expires. Nolan blinked at the glowing schematic. That is it. Lord Kale Draven's hologram smiled from the wall console, smooth and certain again. That is enough. A spouse under war covenant must defend the bride's shelter. In our houses, that means command, strategy, and endurance under pressure. In your little outpost, apparently it means keeping your heir from becoming an inconvenience. Commander Hollis looked at the oxygen readout and went pale for a very practical reason. Oxygen stability is down to 73%. If the exterior intakes stay iced, we will need to move families into emergency compartments within 40 minutes. Nolan felt every camera, every worker, every distant vampire ship, and every person on the station stream turned toward him. For once, no one was asking him to swing a weapon, make a speech, or pretend he understood ancient marriage politics. They were asking him to fix the thing he had crawled through ducts to fix for years, while other people treated it like background noise. His fear did not vanish. It found a toolbox. Dana, he said to Officer Miles, get me 2 thermal coils from Storage C, the copper-rated ones, not the cheap replacements procurement keeps pretending are identical. Dr. Sun, I need every non-essential humidifier in Med Bay shut down for 18 minutes, no longer. Commander Hollis, reroute greenhouse oxygen reserve to family wing only, not station-wide, or the pressure drop will confuse the old valves. Hollis stared at him for half a second, then snapped into motion. You heard him. The bay changed instantly. Panic became movement. Workers ran. Displays shifted. The stream chat that had been full of jokes and terror turned into checklists, pressure readings, camera feeds, and people volunteering from every section. Vaelith stood beside Nolan, silent, watching him issue orders with grease on his sleeves and exhaustion under his eyes. You become different near a broken machine, she said. Nolan pulled the regulator panel open and coughed as cold vapor rolled out. Machines make sense. Usually, people are harder. And Warbrides. He glanced at her while digging through the tool drawer. Still collecting data. A soft sound escaped her, almost a laugh, but the moment passed as the regulator shrieked and the lights dipped. Outside the glass, the rival ships lowered closer to the landing flats. Their red beams swept across the exterior intake towers, not touching them, but watching, waiting for failure. Kale's voice slid through the speakers. You should understand, mechanic, that accepting aid from Commander Arden invalidates the trial. Vaelith's hands closed at her sides. Nolan saw it immediately. The trap was not the repair. It was forcing her to stand still while the outpost struggled, using her own strength against her. A woman trained to protect had to watch protection be denied in her name. Nolan looked at the regulator, then at her. Can you hand me tools? Kale answered before she could. Direct aid. Is carrying a wrench considered military intervention in your empire? Nolan asked. Or are you just nervous she is better at teamwork than your entire house? The station stream erupted with muted reaction icons before Commander Hollis cut the channel noise. The ancient Nocturne system pulsed once. Tool transfer permitted. Non-combat assistance within shelter bond parameters. Vaelith's eyes brightened. Not with power. With purpose. Nolan pointed to the workbench. Half-inch insulated socket. Blue handle. Then hold that panel steady, because if it slips, I am going to say several words your ancient system should not translate. She moved with swift precision, passing the tool into his hand and bracing the panel as if the task were worthy of a fleet commander. Nolan climbed halfway into the maintenance hatch, shoulder pressed against freezing metal, breath fogging the narrow space. The regulator's inner coil had cracked, but not completely. That was the problem. The system kept trying to restart through a partial failure, wasting heat, freezing the intakes, and pulling power away from the scrubbers. It is not dead, he muttered. It is confused. Vaelith leaned closer. Can confusion be repaired? On machines, sometimes. On people. Nolan paused. The question found him in the cramped metal dark. He thought of the joke, the proposal, the trial, the way she had looked when he released the accidental claim. Maybe if they stopped calling it weakness. Behind him, Vaelith said nothing, but her hand remained steady on the panel. The first thermal coil arrived in Officer Miles's arms. The second came carried by a hydroponics technician still wearing slippers. Nolan worked fast, not gracefully, not heroically, but with the practiced urgency of someone who had kept old systems alive because nobody could afford new ones. He rewired the coil array, bypassed the cracked sensor, and rerouted heat through the intake spine. Each step required 3 confirmations, 2 manual overrides, and 1 very quiet apology to the machine when he hit the panel with the heel of his palm. The oxygen display climbed from 73 to 76, then 79. Cheers began somewhere down the station channel, but died when the number froze. Nolan's stomach sank. No, come on. Kale's smile returned. A noble effort. The regulator beeped a warning. Exterior intake 4 remained iced, blocked by a physical obstruction near the outer grill. Manual removal required an exterior walk in low gravity and extreme cold. Commander Hollis shook her head. We cannot send anyone out with rival ships that close. Vaelith stepped forward instantly. I can go. The Nocturne system flashed crimson. Warbride direct intervention invalidates human shelter trial. Kale spread his hands as if saddened by fairness. A pity. Nolan stared at the exterior camera feed. Intake 4 sat a quarter mile across the landing flat, half buried in silver dust and ice. Too far for a normal walk under current conditions. Too risky for an untrained civilian. Too necessary to ignore. Then his gaze caught the service drone hovering near the ceiling, cracked lens pointed at him. No person has to go outside, he said. He grabbed the drone, flipped it over, and popped its casing open. You annoying little witness, congratulations. You are getting promoted. Vaelith tilted her head. Can it survive the cold? No, Nolan said, yanking a thermal strip loose from the regulator packaging. But it only has to be brave for 8 minutes. For the next 5 minutes, the entire station watched a human mechanic and an alien Vampire Warbride rebuild a junk service drone into the ugliest emergency ice-clearing unit in recorded history. Vaelith held parts. Nolan rewired controls. Dr. Sun donated a surgical heating pad, and a child from Family Wing sent a station message suggesting they named the drone Sir Buzz. Nolan did not have time to object, so Sir Buzz it was. He launched it through the maintenance air slot, with 42 seconds left on the rival petition. The drone wobbled into the moon night, crossed the landing flat like a drunk firefly, and reached intake 4 as every eye on Kepler 9 followed. Its little heater sputtered. The ice steamed. The obstruction shifted. The oxygen display climbed. 81, 86, 92. Stable. The maintenance bay exploded into cheers, so loud, even Commander Hollis stopped pretending not to smile. The Nocturne system filled every screen with silver script. Shelter preserved. Human candidate passes protection challenge. Vaelith looked at Nolan, and there was no court, no fleet, no rival house in her expression now, only astonished respect. You defended a station without drawing a blade. Nolan wiped frost and grease from his face. That is usually how maintenance works. Outside, the rival ships held position, but their red beams withdrew. Kale's hologram flickered with contained fury. One repaired machine does not make him worthy of you. Vaelith stepped beside Nolan, no longer waiting for the system to speak for her. No, she said. His choice did. The silver lines around their boots brightened and connected fully for the first time, forming a calm circle of light that included them both but trapped neither. Nolan looked down at it, then at Vaelith. Is that good? Her crimson eyes softened. It means the Covenant has stopped asking whether you are useful. The wall screens flashed again before he could answer. Final phase pending. Public declaration before both peoples. Nolan looked at the viewer count, now spreading beyond Kepler. 9 into United Systems relay channels and Nocturne fleet networks. His mouth went dry. Fixing oxygen had been one thing. Standing in front of 2 civilizations was something else entirely. Vaelith offered him the half-inch socket like a ceremonial blade. Her face solemn, but her eyes almost smiling. Take courage, Nolan read. He accepted the tool. Can I take coffee instead? She looked toward the red ships, then back to him. After we survive your wedding announcement. The public declaration did not happen on a stage. It happened in the maintenance bay because Kepler 9 had no ballroom, no throne hall, and no room large enough to hold the size of the problem Nolan Reed had created. Commander Hollis ordered every camera in Bay 3 stabilized, every station channel secured, and every external feed opened under emergency transparency protocol. Within minutes, Nolan stood beneath the repaired oxygen regulator with grease on his sleeves, a half-inch socket in his hand, and more people watching him than had watched anything he had ever done in his life. The viewer count no longer showed a number. It showed categories. Kepler, 9 station personnel, United Systems civilian relay, Nocturne Dominion fleet access, and unauthorized observers multiplying faster than command could block them. Outside the glass, the rival ships hovered over the silver desert in a wide crimson arc, close enough to cast red shadows over the landing flats, but distant enough to pretend they were not intimidation. Vaelith Ardent stood beside Nolan, pale white skin bright under the bay lights, long silver hair resting over the dark underlayer of her ceremonial armor, crimson eyes calm in the way deep space was calm. Not empty. Vast. Waiting. Lord Kale Draven's hologram appeared larger than before, projected above the central console so every channel could see him. Behind his image, other Nocturne nobles joined as smaller projections, each wearing the severe elegance of houses that had learned to turn tradition into a weapon. Commander Hollis stood on Nolan's other side, arms folded, face stern enough to remind both civilizations that Kepler 9 was still United Systems property, not a wedding chapel for alien aristocracy. The ancient Nocturne system spoke first. Protection phase passed. Public declaration required. Human candidate and Warbride must define covenant before witnesses. Nolan leaned slightly toward Vaelith without taking his eyes off the cameras. Defined covenant sounds serious. It is, she said. The definition becomes law. Of course it does. You may still withdraw. He looked at her then. She was not testing him. She was offering the exit again because that was who she had chosen to become the moment he gave her freedom back. Powerful, dangerous, royal, and still refusing to trap him inside the accident that had summoned her. That, more than the ships outside or the glowing lines on the floor, steadied him. Cale's voice spread across the bay like polished frost. Before declaration proceeds, House Draven requests formal objection. The human has proven technical competence, not social fitness. A Warbride of Commander Arden's rank cannot be bound to a man whose highest office is repairing air filters. A few station workers muttered angrily over the internal channel. Nolan felt the old shame rise, familiar as gravity. Repairing air filters had kept people alive, but men like Cale knew how to make honest work sound small. Vaelith stepped forward before Nolan could answer, and every camera adjusted to her. House Draven mistakes status for worth. Cale smiled thinly. And Commander Ardent mistakes novelty for judgment. No, Vaelith said. I recognize discipline. Nolan Reed stood in a room full of witnesses and gave up the only advantage he had because it was not freely earned. He protected a shelter with knowledge instead of pride. He asked what choice I had before asking what he might gain. If your houses cannot recognize the strength in that, perhaps your houses have been worshipping the wrong kind of power. The maintenance bay went silent, and then the station channel lit with reactions that Commander Hollis did not bother to mute in time. Cale's expression hardened. You would lecture the Dominion beside a mechanic? Vaelith's crimson eyes brightened. I would stand beside a mechanic before kneeling inside a cage built by nobles. The words crossed the public feed and landed like a dropped tool in a silent engine room. On several nocturne projections, faces stiffened. One older vampire noble looked down. Another disappeared entirely, cutting his feed rather than be seen reacting. Nolan realized this was the shock Vaelith had warned him about. Not that she had accepted him. That was scandal. This was worse. She was choosing the meaning of the covenant in front of everyone. Commander Hollis looked at Nolan. Mr. Reed, your declaration. His mouth went dry again. He had fixed oxygen systems in front of angry supervisors. He had spoken into a maintenance stream for bored co-workers. He had not defined a relationship under the eyes of two civilizations before breakfast. Nolan looked at the camera drone, the same cracked lens witness that had caused the accident, now hovering quietly as if ashamed of its promotion. Then he looked at Vaelith. I did not call for a wife because I understood what I was doing, he said. I said it because I was lonely and tired and trying to make people laugh before another broken night swallowed me whole. Commander Arden heard that, and instead of treating it like weakness, she treated it like truth. But truth is not ownership. So here is my declaration. I will not be her master. I will not be her excuse. I will not be the human face on someone else's political deal. If she chooses to stay, then I choose to stand with her as a partner, in public, with all the inconvenience that comes with that. For a moment, the only sound was the regulator humming behind him, steady and alive because he had made it so. Then the nocturne system pulsed silver. Human declaration recorded. Warbride declaration required. Vaelith turned to face him. Not the cameras, not Cale, not the fleets. Nolan Reed. I answered because your call carried no hunger for power. I remain because when the law gave you control, you returned my choice. I declare before the Nocturne Dominion and the United Systems that I choose this covenant freely. I will defend your life, your home, and your people, not because ancient machinery demands it, but because you taught it to ask the right question. The silver circle around them brightened, but did not close like a trap. It widened, making room around both of them. The ancient voice spoke again. Mutual declaration accepted. Temporary covenant recognized. Final status requires 7th Fleet acknowledgement. Cale's smile returned too quickly. And there lies the final problem. Outside, one massive ship behind Vaelith's blade-shaped vessel powered its crimson glass from dark red to white. Vaelith went still. The flagship. A new projection appeared above every screen. Not Cale now, but a woman older than Vaelith, pale and severe, wearing armor marked with the same ardent crest. Her eyes were crimson, her hair silver, her face painfully familiar. Vaelith's breath caught. Mother. The High Marshal of the Nocturne Dominion looked from Vaelith to Nolan to the watching outpost, and her voice carried the weight of fleets. "Commander Vaelith Ardent, daughter of my blood, you have placed our war line before a mechanic, a civilian station, and half the known relay network." Nolan expected anger. Instead, the High Marshal's gaze moved to the repaired oxygen regulator humming above them. "Explain why I should not consider this the most interesting strategic alliance you have ever made." The High Marshal's question landed harder than any threat from House Draven because it did not sound like anger. It sounded like evaluation. Nolan Reed stood under the repaired oxygen regulator with the half-inch socket still in his hand, aware that the mother of the alien Vampire Warbride beside him was studying him the way a commander studied a bridge before deciding whether it could hold an army. Vaelith did not move for 3 long seconds. Her pale face remained composed, her crimson eyes steady, but Nolan saw the change in her breathing. A daughter facing her mother, a commander facing her superior, a woman who had just chosen freely facing the person whose approval could turn that choice into law or bury it beneath duty. Lord Kael Draven smiled again, sensing weakness like a man who had mistaken family for leverage. "High Marshal Ardent," he said smoothly, "your daughter has been drawn into a defective covenant by a human maintenance worker with no strategic rank. House Draven requests immediate fleet review before this embarrassment spreads beyond recovery." The High Marshal did not even look at him. Her holographic gaze remained on the oxygen regulator above Nolan's head. "I heard the request. I asked for an explanation, not noise." Kael's jaw tightened. A ripple moved through the nocturne projections. Vaelith lifted her chin. "Mother, the Covenant system accepted his call because it found voluntary truth beneath accidental language. The protection trial chose shelter preservation, and he passed without using force. He returned my agency before claiming any standing. That is why the law recognized him. That is why the machine recognized him." The High Marshal corrected. "Tell me why I should." Vaelith went silent, and the bay seemed to hold its breath. Nolan expected her to list his actions like evidence: the repair, the declaration, the refusal to sign Kael's statement. Instead, she turned toward him, and the public feed captured the smallest break in her royal armor. "Because he saw me before he understood me," she said. "Every house saw a command line, a fleet asset, a bloodline, a marriage advantage. Nolan Reed saw someone being cornered and asked what choice I had. That should not be rare enough to change history, but it was." Nolan felt the words hit the places he usually covered with jokes. For once, he had no funny answer ready. Commander Hollis cleared her throat, stepping into view with the fearless exhaustion of an American station commander who had run out of patience for aristocrats before sunrise. "High Marshal, for the United Systems record, Mr. Reed also preserved oxygen stability for civilian sectors under pressure from multiple Dominion vessels. Families on this station are safe because he understands systems the rest of us take for granted." The High Marshal's eyes shifted to Hollis. "Your testimony supports his practical value. It supports his character," Hollis replied. The station channel went very quiet after that. Nolan stared at her, surprised. Hollis did not look back, but her mouth tightened as if to say, "Do not make me regret complimenting you." The ancient nocturne system pulsed softly around the silver circle at Nolan and Vaelith's feet. Then Kael stepped forward in his hologram, charm giving way to urgency. Character does not anchor a war line. If the High Marshal acknowledges this covenant, every human broadcast, every border mechanic, every lonely civilian with a microphone may believe they can summon what belongs to the Dominion. There it was, Nolan realized. Not concern for Vaelith. Not honor. Fear that the wrong people might learn ancient law could answer them too. The High Marshal finally looked at Kael. "Commander Ardent does not belong to the Dominion. She serves it." Kael's face went still. Vaelith's eyes widened just slightly. The High Marshal turned back to Nolan. "Human Nolan Reed, you passed a trial of shelter. But alliance is not built on repair alone. If you stand beside my daughter, every insult aimed at her choice will pass through you first. Every house that wanted her obedience will study you for weakness. Every day, people will say you are beneath her." Nolan felt the truth of it settle in his bones. It was not a threat. It was a warning from someone who knew the battlefield ahead. He looked at Vaelith. She was watching him without demand, without fear for herself, but with open concern for what his answer might cost him. He could still step away. The covenant was temporary. The whole universe had given him a door and labeled it safe. Nolan thought of his old life on Kepler. 9. Bad coffee, broken heaters, 6 people laughing at his stream because nobody wanted to admit they were lonely too. Then he thought of Vaelith standing outside in moon dust, waiting for permission when she could have forced the world to make room. People have said I am beneath plenty of things, Nolan said. Promotion lists, family expectations, machines that should have been replaced 5 years ago. I survived all of that. But if I stand beside her, it will not be because I think I am equal to her rank. It will be because she is more than her rank, and someone should keep saying that out loud. The silver circle brightened. Vaelith looked away for a second, but not before he saw the emotion cross her face. The High Marshal studied him in silence. Then she asked, "And what do you ask in return?" Cale's expression sharpened, waiting for greed. Nolan looked around the bay, at the station crew, the repaired regulator, the cameras, the red ships outside. 3 things, he said. First, no house gets to punish her for choosing. Second, Kepler, 9 stays out of Dominion power games. Third, somebody sends replacement parts for the oxygen system, because this outpost is 1 bad week away from becoming a museum of bad decisions. For 2 full seconds, no one spoke. Then someone in the station channel laughed before cutting their microphone. Dr. Sun covered her smile with one hand. Even Commander Hollis looked down. The High Marshal's severe face did not smile, but something in her eyes changed. A human standing before the Nocturne Dominion asks for spare parts. Respectfully, Nolan said. Good alliances need breathable air. Vaelith turned toward the High Marshal. Mother, House Draven would have taken my name and called it stability. Nolan asks for protection, boundaries, and tools to keep civilians alive. That is the alliance I choose. The High Marshal raised one armored hand. Every Nocturne projection dimmed except hers. Outside, the flagship's white-crimson glow softened. Then hear my answer. The 7th Fleet acknowledges temporary covenant between Commander Vaelith Ardent and Nolan Reed of Kepler. 9. Pending final dawn right. House Draven challenge is denied. The maintenance bay erupted, not into chaos, but into stunned human relief and vampire silence. Cale stepped back as if struck by disbelief rather than force. High Marshal, this is an insult to every ancient house. No, the High Marshal said. It is a reminder that ancient houses survive by adapting before they rot. The Nocturne system flashed silver. Fleet acknowledgement recorded. Final dawn right available. Vaelith turned to Nolan, and for the first time all night, she looked almost afraid of hope. The final right will ask whether we make this permanent. Nolan's heartbeat climbed, but his voice stayed steady. Then I guess we should make sure the coffee is better. Vaelith's laugh was quiet, surprised, and real. Outside, one by one, the rival ships began to pull back from the landing flats, their red lights shrinking against the gas giant's glow, while the first pale line of morning touched the edge of the moon. The final dawn rite was supposed to happen outside, but Kepler 9 had never been good at ceremonies, so the outpost improvised with what it had. A cleared maintenance bay, a repaired oxygen regulator humming above them like an elderly witness, floodlights pointed toward the observation glass, and nearly the entire station gathered behind the safety line in jackets, pajamas, uniforms, and thermal blankets. Nolan Reed stood near the center of Bay 3 with fresh grease on one sleeve because the regulator had briefly complained again and he had refused to let ancient vampire law begin under a suspicious rattle. Vaelith Ardent stood beside him, no longer stripped of her armor, but not fully dressed for war either. Her dark ceremonial plating had reshaped itself into something formal and restrained, black alloy woven with crimson lines, severe enough for a commander, elegant enough for a bride, and practical enough to move in if someone made the mistake of turning ceremony into politics. Outside, the silver desert moon stretched under the first pale glow of morning, while Vaelith's blade-shaped ship waited on the landing flat like a silent promise. Most of the rival vessels had withdrawn, but House Draven's ship still hovered at the edge of the authorized perimeter, its red lights dimmed but not gone. Lord Cale Draven appeared on the wall monitor, smaller now, no longer dominating the room, but still present like a bad-smell diplomacy had not yet filtered out. The High Marshal's projection stood above the central console, calm and severe, while Commander Hollis held a tablet full of emergency treaties, station liability forms, and one note Nolan had seen her type in all capital letters. No one is allowed to accidentally marry anyone else before noon. The nocturne system lit the floor with a silver circle around Nolan and Vaelith, but this time the circle stayed open at 2 points, one before each of them. A door and light. A way out. The ancient voice filled the bay. Final dawn right begins. Temporary covenant may dissolve without penalty. Permanent covenant requires mutual choice, public definition, and shared consequence. Nolan felt the whole station lean into the silence. Vaelith looked at the open gap in the circle near his feet. "That is your exit," she said softly. "If you step through it, the law releases you. No house may claim insult. No record may shame you. I will confirm before all witnesses that you acted with honor." Nolan looked at the gap. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, a clean escape drawn in silver light. Beyond it waited his old life, maintenance shifts, bad coffee, cracked drone streams, and the familiar safety of being underestimated by people who did not know they depended on him. Then he looked at Vaelith. She was not pleading. That mattered more than any vow. She had crossed the void because an ancient system hurt his loneliness, but she stood there now refusing to use it against him. "What happens if you step through yours?" he asked. Vaelith's gaze flicked to the open gap before her. "I return to my fleet unbound. My mother's acknowledgement protects me from immediate custody, but the houses will continue to petition. They will call this a curiosity, a malfunction, a night of human interference best forgotten." Kale's voice slid from the monitor. "A wise summary." Vaelith did not look at him. Nolan did. "Nobody asked you." Somewhere behind the safety line, a miner coughed very hard to hide a laugh. The High Marshal's mouth did not move, but her eyes sharpened with what Nolan suspected might have been approval. The nocturne voice continued. "Human Nolan Reed, define what you offer under permanent covenant." Nolan exhaled slowly. "I offer a home that needs repairs, a station full of nosy witnesses, coffee that will disappoint you, and a life where nobody gets to use you as a treaty without hearing from me first. I cannot promise I will understand your world quickly. I cannot promise I will not make jokes at terrible moments. I cannot promise I will be fearless. But I can promise that any choice we make will stay a choice. And if the universe tries to turn you into property again, I will be very annoying about it in public." The station channel filled with silent reaction icons before Hollis shut them off with the speed of a commander preserving dignity by force. The silver light around Nolan brightened, not closing, simply listening. The ancient voice shifted. "Warbride Vaelith ardent, define what you offer under permanent covenant." Vaelith turned fully toward Nolan, and in the cold light of Bay 3, she looked less like a weapon, less like a political storm, and more like a woman finally naming herself where everyone could hear. "I offer protection without ownership. I offer my rank without making you kneel beneath it. I offer truth where my houses taught strategy, shelter where my fleets taught conquest, and loyalty that remains loyal only because it is freely renewed. I will defend you, this outpost, and the boundary between our peoples, not as a prize answering a call, but as Vaelith ardent choosing who stands beside her." The bay was completely silent now. Even the machines seemed respectful. The ancient system pulsed once. Shared consequence required. The High Marshal stepped forward inside her projection. "The consequence is this. Nolan Reed will be recognized by the 7th Fleet as civilian consort under protected status, with no command authority unless freely delegated. Commander Vaelith Ardent will retain rank, fleet command, and independent legal standing. Kepler 9 will be designated a protected contact station between the United Systems and the Nocturne Dominion. House interference will be considered treaty violation." Kale's face hardened. "House Draven objects." Commander Hollis raised her tablet. "United Systems records the objection and also records that House Draven currently has one unauthorized vessel inside a civilian safety perimeter." The High Marshal looked at Kale. "Withdraw, Lord Draven." For a long moment, the red ship outside did not move. Then, slowly, its lights dimmed, and it turned away from the landing flat. The public channel caught the moment in absolute silence. The last rival shadow left Kepler 9's morning sky, and with it went the final shape of the threat that had circled Nolan's joke since 2:17 in the morning. The ancient voice returned. "Objection withdrawn by action. Final choice remains." The two gaps in the silver circle glowed brighter. Nolan and Vaelith could still leave. That was the point. Everyone could see it. No trap. No accident. No forced bond hiding inside old words. Vaelith held out her pale hand, stopping just short of his, letting the last inch belong to him. Nolan looked at that hand, then at the crackling service drone hovering near the ceiling, then at the oxygen regulator humming because the whole outpost had helped keep itself alive. He stepped past his exit and took her hand. Vaelith's fingers closed around his, steady and cool, and then she stepped past her own exit to stand beside him. The silver circle did not snap shut. It widened beneath their feet until it reached the safety line, then the observation glass, then the landing flat outside where morning spread across the desert dust. Mutual choice confirmed, the ancient voice said. Covenant recognized. No explosion of power followed. No chains of light. Just a soft silver glow around their joined hands and a sound from the station that began as one person clapping, then became dozens, then hundreds, until Bay 3 shook with human applause and nocturne silence deep enough to be respect. On the wall monitor, the High Marshal lowered her head. Not much, just enough for every house to see it. Vaelith's eyes widened, and Nolan understood that her mother had just bowed to their choice. Outside, her ship projected the ardent crest in crimson and silver above the outpost, not as a warning, but as recognition. Commander Hollis sighed beside them. Congratulations, Mr. Reed. You are now a diplomatic incident with benefits. Nolan looked at Vaelith. Does that mean I get the spare parts? Vaelith's laugh was quiet, bright, and completely real. Yes, husband. I believe that was in the alliance. The word husband should have terrified him. Instead, because she had said it after giving him every chance to leave, it felt less like a title and more like a door they had both walked through on purpose. As Kepler-9's first sunrise spilled over the observation glass, Nolan Reed stood in a maintenance bay beside the alien Vampire Warbride, who had answered his loneliest joke. While humans cheered, vampires bowed, and the repaired oxygen system breathed steadily above them like the outpost itself had decided this strange new future was worth keeping alive. The applause in Bay 3 faded slowly, not because anyone stopped believing what had happened, but because everyone seemed to understand that recognition was only the beginning of responsibility. The Silver Covenant circle widened one final time beneath Nolan Reed and Vaelith Ardent, then dissolved into a thin band of light around their joined hands. Warm but weightless, present but not possessive. Nolan felt no chain in it, no invisible command, no forced affection. The ancient nocturne system had taken his careless joke apart piece by piece, tested the truth beneath it, and rebuilt the result into something both of them had chosen with open exits at their feet. That was the twist of the old Warbride law. It had never been designed to trap a bride. It had been designed to protect consent in a time when noble houses turned marriage into military paperwork. Over centuries, the houses had buried that meaning beneath ceremony, status, and fear. Nolan's accident had not created love from nothing. It had exposed a forgotten question inside the law. When every powerful person wants to claim someone, who asks what that person wants? Vaelith stood before the live feeds of the United Systems, the Nocturne Dominion, the Seventh Fleet, and every half-awake resident of Kepler-9, her pale face calm, her crimson eyes bright, and her hand still resting in Nolan's. Then she released him. The gesture was small, but the whole bay felt it. She stepped back 2 paces, leaving clear space between them, and turned to the ancient projection hovering above the maintenance floor. Record this before all witnesses, she said. The covenant remains valid only if Nolan Reed confirms again after recognition. No bond, title, right, or fleet acknowledgement may stand in place of his final choice. Nolan looked at her, startled. They had just completed the rite. The court had bowed. The ships had withdrawn. She could have accepted the victory and wrapped it in law before anyone found a loophole. Instead, she handed him the door again in front of everyone. Lord Cale Draven's reduced projection flickered at the edge of the console, still connected, still furious, but now watched by the High Marshal and 2 civilizations. Commander Ardent, he said coldly, you weaken your own standing. Vaelith did not look at him. No, I prove it is mine. The High Marshal's projection tilted her head slightly, and that one gesture silenced House Draven more effectively than any order. The ancient system responded in silver text across the bay walls. Final human confirmation permitted. All prior penalties waived. Nolan stared at the words. There it was. The clean way out. Not symbolic now, not theoretical. He could go back to being just Nolan Reed, systems mechanic, night shift joke machine, unofficial guardian of a service drone named Sir Buzz. Vaelith would still be protected by her mother's acknowledgement. Kepler 9 would receive the replacement parts. The rival houses had been publicly denied. He could leave without betraying her. That made the choice harder and better. Commander Hollis stepped closer, lowering her voice enough that only he and Vaelith could hear. Mr. Reed, for what it is worth, nobody on this station will think less of you if you step away. Nolan glanced toward the safety line. Dozens of familiar faces watched him. Officer Miles, Dr. Son, the hydroponics tech in slippers, miners with helmets tucked under their arms, families wrapped in blankets, children peeking between adults. These people had watched him turn a joke into a crisis and a repair job into a diplomatic foundation. They would understand fear. That was the mercy of ordinary people. They knew fear personally. Nolan looked back at Vaelith. What happens to you if I stay? He asked. I remain commander of the 7th Crimson Fleet, she said. I also become the first ardent warbride in 3 centuries to define a covenant with a human civilian under mutual consent. Some houses will call it disgrace. Some will call it weakness. Some will wait for me to fail. And what do you call it? Her expression softened, not into fragility, but honesty. Mine. That word settled the room. Not his. Not theirs. Mine. Her choice. Her price. Her agency spoken in public where no noble house could edit it later. Nolan felt the fear remain in him, but it no longer decided for him. He stepped forward, not because the circle pulled him, not because the title flattered him, not because a lonely joke had trapped him in a story larger than his life. He stepped forward because Vaelith had made freedom the foundation, and he wanted to see what kind of future could be built on that. Then record this too, Nolan said, raising his voice for every channel. I stay, not because a machine heard me wrong. Not because an empire needs a headline. Not because I think I know how to be a consort, ambassador, husband, or whatever word makes the lawyers sweat the least. I stay because Vaelith Ardent chose me after I gave her every reason not to. And because when someone that powerful uses her power to protect your choice, you do not answer by running from hers. The bay went completely still. Then the silver band around their hands returned, softer than before, no longer circling their wrists, but glowing between their palms like a small shared star. The Nocturne system spoke with finality. Permanent covenant confirmed by mutual free choice. Nolan Reed recognized as civilian consort of Commander Vaelith Ardent, protected human liaison of Kepler 9, and first shelter witness between the United Systems and the Nocturne Dominion. Vaelith Ardent retains full command, legal independence, and right of refusal against all House claims. House Draven objection closed. The public payoff arrived in waves. First, Commander Hollis lowered her tablet and gave Nolan one sharp nod, the kind of nod that meant both congratulations and paperwork. Then Officer Miles lowered her sidearm fully to her belt in visible trust. Around the bay, station workers did the same with tools, helmets, and raised shoulders, their fear loosening into recognition. On the Nocturne feeds, the older nobles did not clap. They did something heavier. One by one, their projections bowed their heads. Outside the observation glass, Vaelith's blade-shaped ship lowered its crimson landing lights until they shone across the dust like banners laid down. The High Marshal placed one armored fist over her heart. The 7th Fleet recognizes the Covenant. Kale Draven's projection flickered, trapped inside public defeat. House Draven reserves future legal review. The High Marshal's eyes cut toward him. House Draven may reserve silence. His projection vanished. Human laughter broke the tension first, then applause returned, not frantic this time, but full, rolling through the maintenance bay and down the station corridors. Vaelith turned to Nolan as the sound rose around them. You realize consort is not a decorative role. Nolan nodded. Good. I would be terrible at decorative. You will need training. I figured. Protocol. Unfortunately believable. And better coffee. He looked wounded. That one felt personal. Vaelith smiled then. Not the restrained curve from before, but a real smile that changed her whole face and made the most dangerous woman on the moon look, for 1 second, simply relieved not to be alone. The replacement parts arrived 2 hours later in sleek nocturne cargo pods that landed with more grace than anything containing valve seals had a right to possess. By station noon, Kepler 9 had breathable air, a protected contact designation, and a new rule posted by Commander Hollis outside Bay 3. No ceremonial language on live streams without legal review. Nolan kept the cracked service drone anyway. Sir Buzz hovered above the workbench, its lens repaired with nocturne glass, broadcasting one final image across the authorized channels. A white human mechanic in a worn gray jumpsuit, and a pale white alien Vampire Warbride in dark ceremonial armor standing together before the observation window as the gas giant rose blue and enormous beyond the desert moon. Behind them, humans cheered, vampire officers bowed, and the oxygen regulator hummed steadily overhead. Nolan had made one lonely joke into an accident, then turned that accident into a choice. Vaelith had answered as a Warbride, but stayed as herself. And on the edge of mapped space, where a forgotten outpost used to rust in silence, two peoples now had a door between them instead of a wall.